Have you ever given everything you had and then completely fallen apart right after? Not from failure, from pushing too far, for too long, with nothing left to give. That's where we find Elijah today. And what God does next might be something you've never seen in this story before. To understand what's happening in 1 Kings 19, you need to know what happened the day before. Actually, you need to know what happened the 3.5 years before. Elijah had been living in hiding. He declared a drought over Israel, told King Ahab directly that no rain would fall except at his word. And then God told him to run. He hid by a brook while ravens fed him. When the brook dried up, God sent him to a widow in Zarephath, a foreign woman barely surviving herself, and she fed him until the drought ended. For 3.5 years, Elijah had been invisible, off the map, completely dependent on God for each next provision. Then God said, "It's time. Go back. Show yourself to Ahab." And Elijah walked back onto the national stage to propose the most audacious public contest imaginable. All of Israel assembled on Mount Carmel, 450 prophets of Baal, 400 prophets of Asherah, King Ahab himself, the entire nation watching, and Elijah, one man standing alone on the other side of the altar. The deal was simple. Call on your God, I'll call on mine. Whoever answers by fire, he is God. The prophets of Baal went first. They called from morning until noon. They shouted. They cut themselves with knives until blood flowed. They limped and leaped around the altar. Nothing, not a spark, not a sound. Then Elijah stepped forward. He repaired the broken altar of the Lord. He used 12 stones, one for each tribe of Israel. He dug a trench. He arranged the wood in the sacrifice. And then he poured water over all of it, not once, 3 times, until the water ran down and filled the trench. He made it harder, on purpose. There would be no question about what happened next. And then he prayed one sentence, and fire came down from heaven, consumed the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, the water. Gone. The people fell on their faces. The Lord, He is God. That was Elijah's moment. Everything he'd worked for, every risk he'd taken, every year alone by that brook, every morning waiting for a bird to bring him his next meal, every night in a widow's house in a foreign country, trusting God one day at a time. It all landed right there. And then rain came, the first rain in 3.5 years. Elijah ran ahead of Ahab's chariot all the way to Jezreel, 20 miles, in the strength and joy of the Lord. This man was full. And then the very next morning, Jezebel sent a message. By this time tomorrow you'll be dead. That's all it took. After years of hiding, after ravens and widows and drought, after fire fell from heaven and a nation fell on its face, one threatening message from one angry queen, and Elijah ran. He didn't pray. He didn't stand his ground. He ran into the wilderness, alone. He sat down under a juniper tree, and he said something we don't usually put on coffee mugs. "It is enough, Lord. Take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers." He asked to die, right after his greatest victory. Here's what I want you to notice. This doesn't read like a character flaw. This reads like a human being who had nothing left. Burnout doesn't wait for a logical moment. It doesn't ask permission. It comes in right after the victory, right after the thing you gave everything to, the crash after the summit. Think about what Jezebel's message actually said to him. "I'm coming for you tomorrow." And not one person around him, not the king who had just witnessed everything, not the crowd who had fallen on their faces. Not one stepped forward to stand between Elijah and that threat. He'd given everything, and he stood alone again, as if none of it had happened. That's where Elijah is, not failing, emptied. Now watch what God does. There's no rebuke, no "get yourself together," no lecture about faith. An angel touches him. "Arise and eat." That's it. Food was there. A cake baked on coals, a jar of water. Elijah ate and drank, and he lay back down. And then the angel comes a second time. "Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you." Stay here a moment. That phrase, "the journey is too great for you," is not a criticism. It's not God pointing out Elijah's weakness. It's not, "if you had more faith, this would be easier." It's God acknowledging the weight of what Elijah was carrying, The journey is too great for you. We don't usually let ourselves say that. We think faith means you shouldn't be this tired. We think exhaustion means something's wrong with our walk with God. But look at what God sends. Not a sermon, not a correction. An angel with bread. Sleep first, then food. Then, the journey is too great for you. He's not disappointed in Elijah's emptiness. He's meeting it. Think about what that means for you today. If you've been pushing through exhaustion and calling it faithfulness, if you've been ashamed of how tired you are because you thought faith was supposed to make you stronger, look at this moment again. God didn't send Elijah a better theology. He sent bread. He didn't correct his emotions. He let him sleep. The very first thing God did for his most broken prophet was make sure he had eaten and rested. That's not a small detail. That's the pattern. Before the next assignment comes the restoration. Before the direction comes the provision. God never skips the bread. And he's not skipping it for you either. Elijah travels for 40 days on the strength of that food. 40 days. The same number as Moses fasted on Sinai. The same number as Israel's testing in the wilderness. In Scripture, 40 days marks a season where God is doing something that takes exactly as long as it takes. He ends up at Horeb, the mountain of God, the place where Moses heard God in the burning bush, where the law was given, where God had shown up before in fire and thunder and covenant. Elijah didn't choose this cave randomly. He walked 40 days to the one place in the world where he knew God had been real, and he hid. Then the word of the Lord came. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" That question stops me every time. There's no accusation in it. No, why aren't you back out there working? God isn't annoyed. He's asking Elijah to tell the truth, out loud to God's face, and Elijah does. "I've been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts. The children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, killed your prophets. I am the only one left, and they seek to take my life." He's isolated. He's exhausted. He thinks he's completely alone in this. God doesn't argue with him. He doesn't say that's not true or you're being dramatic. He doesn't minimize what Elijah is feeling. Instead, he tells Elijah to stand at the entrance of the cave, and then he shows him something. A wind came, not a strong breeze. The text says it tore the mountains apart and broke the rocks in pieces. But God was not in the wind. Then an earthquake, the ground itself, the thing you stand on, the thing you've always called solid, shaking, shifting, cracking open. But God was not in the earthquake. Then fire, the same kind of fire Elijah knew from Carmel, the fire that consumed everything. But God was not in the fire. And then something the Hebrew calls kol damama daka, a sound of gentle stillness, a thin silence, the bare whisper of a breath. That is where God was. Think about what Elijah had been expecting. He knew God as the God of the unmistakable moment. Fire from heaven, ravens at the brook, flower that doesn't run out. He'd spent his entire prophetic life watching God move in ways that were obvious, undeniable, impossible to miss. And God came in a whisper. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle, the same gesture Moses made when God passed by on this same mountain. He moved to the entrance of the cave, not running, not bold, just standing, listening. And the question came again, word for word. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He gives the exact same answer, as if the wind and earthquake and fire changed nothing. Maybe they didn't. Maybe the point was never to overwhelm him with power. Maybe the point was the whisper, the quiet question that won't let you go, that follows you into the cave and waits at the entrance and keeps asking you to say the true thing out loud. And then, 3 names, 2 tasks, 1 appointment, a specific next step. Go, return on your way. Not a motivational speech, a direction. And then this. "Yet I have reserved 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed to Baal." 7,000, hidden, invisible to Elijah from where he stood, quietly holding their faith in a nation that looked entirely given over. You're not the only one. You're not as alone as you think. There are people you can't see from where you're standing. God knows exactly who they are. Here's what I want you to hold on to. When you're running on empty, when the tank is gone, and you don't know how to take the next step, the Bible doesn't say push through. It doesn't say pray harder and try again. God's response to Elijah's most broken moment was, rest, eat. You're not alone. Here's the next step. Not disappointment, not correction, provision, presence, a direction forward. The journey is too great for you. He knows, and he meets you right there. If this spoke to you, we're building a community of people who want to actually apply biblical wisdom to real life, not just talk about it. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming next on this channel.